Craighead County was officially formed in 1859. Over the course of its history, numerous jails have housed the county's lawbreakers.
There's been 7 jails, counting the one we got today.
The longest lasting, most durable Craighead County jail was jail number 6, built in the late 1930s.
The Craighead County Jail was built in 1939 at the corner of Jackson and Madison Street.
For 50 years, from 1939 to 1989, this jail served the citizens of Craighead County. It was torn down in 2023, but its legacy will live on.
From here back was the jail part where the inmates stayed, from here back. And then this office is where the jailer stayed, and he also was a dispatcher. After the sheriff's office closed at 5 o'clock, the jailer was also a dispatcher for the sheriff's office at night. And they might have 1 or 2 deputies out, usually at the most, that's most they ever had out, usually 1 to 2 hours of the morning. But on weekends, the jailer was also a dispatcher for the county. This was a kitchen. The only thing different about this now, there used to be a commercial gas stove over here, and there was a round little kitchen table and a refrigerator. Other than that, best I remember, this is about all it was in here.
Their food was not adequate. In the morning, if I remember right, they'd have a biscuit and a bowl of rice. Lunch, they'd have a bologna sandwich. At dinner time, they'd have a bologna sandwich, and that was it.
And then that was the living quarters back there for the jailer and their family.
Back in those days, the jailer lived here, him and his wife, and they didn't exit it much. They stayed inside.
This is the living quarters here.
Think about this old jail, we think about the jailers. John Cade was a jailer when Lonnie Cooper was sheriff, and Herb Newcomb, and Bud Marshall. Then come down to John Hitchcock. Now John Hitchcock was a great kidder. He'd get you in, you'd been here putting your fellow in jail, he'd be out turning everything on in your car. And then when you got back and turned the key on, while your wipers would start, your siren would start, and so I don't know if it was Jack or who it was, but they put a couple of chickens in John's personal car out back and left it overnight. Well, when he opened it the next morning, the chickens flew out in his face. They missed all over his car, but it stopped John from doing little things to us.
Terry Qualls was jailer here. Like I said, it was so hot and everything. He was in the little radio room there. Didn't have a shirt on. And I'd come over here, I drove over here to get the prisoners for court, and then I'm going to walk them back over to City Hall. And I threw a glass of cold water on him, and then took the prisoners over there. But I left my car sitting out here in front. And I knew he was going to do something, so I had one of the other guys drive me back over, and I had the door handle ready, and I had my keys in my hand. I was going to get out and jump my car and take off. Well, I did that. As soon as I got to the corner right there, about 20 feet, he'd filled my car full of gas, tear gas. And I had to bail out of it.
And there was probably a lot of stuff that went on up here back in the early years, because there wasn't any cameras in here. There wasn't any jailers. I mean, they were checking it every once in a while, but when one jailer was here in this whole jail, he didn't have time to come up here and check on everybody. He couldn't, because if he come up here, he'd leave the door open downstairs. So there's a lot went on up here. Unless it got loud, the jailer never even knew anything was going on up here. It'd be kind of scary to be in jail under those circumstances, not, up here by yourself, kind of. I remember back, most of the prisoners in this jail was either in this section here or the section over here. There's a few downstairs. That door right there was locked, so half the prisoners was behind this one locked door. Nothing else in here was locked. If there was a problem during the middle of the night, the jailer he's here by himself, so they'd have to call either a Jonesboro officer or a deputy, if a deputy was available, to come over here. The officer would come over and lock the deputy in the jail by himself, and the jailer would come up here by himself into this room, there's probably 60 inmates in here, I guess, and take care of the problem by himself. It had to be a tough jailer back in those days.
John Varner just passed away. When he went to work as a jailer in this jail, he worked 6 months without a day off.
Well, back then, when we'd get a drunk driver, we had to take him over to City Hall right across the road there to take the breathalyzer test. And if he flunked it, it was easier to walk him over here than it was to get him in the car and over here and get him out again. And that's when the fight was started, fight all the way across that street. Not necessarily just fight, but shoving and pushing. And he didn't want to go, but it was a, it was a long walk.
Jack and I used to do a lot of undercover operations, and we had a person that was going to make some buys for us, so we wired him up, sent him out on a deal, and ended up arresting the guy for drugs. And we arrested our informant also to make it look good. Had brought him up here to the jail, and he told us on the way that we brought him up here separately. He told us on the way he was going to show off a little bit to make it look good. So we pull up here in front of the jail, and we start toward the screen door, and he goes to scuffling with us and this and that. About that time, a state trooper was inside the jail. He come flying out the door, seen we needed help, grabbed the boy, threw him down on the ground. And of course, we couldn't say nothing right then. And we got him inside and got the other boy put behind the bars and up here. And then the one the trooper threw down, we taking his shirt off, and of course he had the mic on him, wired up and everything. It was pretty funny.
County Extension office was right across the street then, big glass window. The secretaries, anytime you get a fight out front, you're trying to get they all up at the window looking and seeing what, they never did offer to help or anything, but they wanted to look. And me and Plug Eaton had a drunk driver one time, and he had an artificial leg, and he wouldn't get out of the car. Well, we had to push and pull, and doing that, we pulled his leg off, you know. And so we started in here, and we was holding him, then holding his leg, and them women run up there and looked. I heard one say, "Oh Lord, they pulled his leg off."
There's a lot of bad times, but there's a lot of good times too. And one good thing about it, we made lifelong friendships. And I went to work in 1973, retired in 2012, spent almost 40 years between the police department and sheriff's office. And he spent 44, another friend of ours spent 47. This has been our life. And so when they tear this place down, there'll be at least 10,000 ghosts fly out of here, because there's a lot of them here.
I hope they ain't talking.
This was a female section. There's only 2 bunks in here for females when this thing was built. And they had a shower here and a toilet there. Over there, or a toilet somewhere, yeah, toilet in the corner and a shower. So when this was built back in the 1930s, they only put bunks in for 2 females at the time. So there wasn't very many females in jail here. I mean, there was nights there wasn't any females in jail. And then there's only 2 bunks downstairs for females. I remember they'd make exceptions for maybe 3 or 4, and they was kind of in a panic, like, we got to get somebody out of here because we got too many females in here. You know, now they got a lot of females in jail, so that's how things have changed since back in the 1980s.
Women are meaner now, ain't they? You ain't gonna say.
Okay. There's 2 drunk tanks on the bottom floor here. This is one of them. If they brought a intoxicated person in here, they'd put them in here until they sobered up, and then they'd take them upstairs. Come on around. This is another one. There used to be benches in here.
Had an old boy, pretty good old boy when he's sober, but he got to drinking a little bit, and Caraway was playing Nettleton, and he thought the referees was giving him a bad thing, so he was showing out, and so the referee stopped the game and had me and Lester take him outside, and well, he got outside, he's gonna go back in, you know, and he was rowdy, and we had a little round with him there, and we called city officer to come down and get it, and Star showed up. Well, he made a mistake of trying to kick Star, and so he was up here to jail, and he got a whooping from Star too, and they told him, said, you got a phone call. He said, okay, and he called the Nettleton gym and said, what's the score?
You know what's next. Them inmates would wake him up and they'd get to hollering and screaming and yelling. No, you see how loud that was? Yeah. I was telling him when they brought intoxicated people in here in the middle of the night, they'd get kicking that door and hollering and screaming. It'd wake all the inmates up and everybody be up there hollering and yelling. And
that scared the crap out of me.
as the story goes, there's only 3 people that escaped, and that was at one time through the dumbwaiter out here. Yeah. Other than that, there hadn't been any escapes.
Well, we had one run out the back door.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just.
But he was a trustee. They'd sent him over here. There used to be a Safeway grocery store. And they'd sent him over there to get food and stuff for here. And one day he just bailed out and went out the door. We found him pretty quick though.
But far as escapes from this jail right here, I mean, they've been lucky all these years. Only 3 that way.
Just those 3 at one time through the dumbwaiter.
What was told, there was only 1 escape out here by 3 inmates, from what I was told, and they escaped through this dumbwaiter, which is like an elevator, not for people, but for items. It goes down to the bottom floor, and they used to serve, or I guess breakfast and so forth, meals that used to come up on that dumbwaiter. And they say that's how they had an escape here.
I don't know how in the world they ever got a jailer, no more than they paid him. And
if I remember, I'm talking about back in the 80s, the jailer would work 6 days a week. And if somebody went on vacation, they had to work 12 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week without any overtime pay or anything.
Like I say, especially the county, it was not uncommon at all to work 16 hours a day for next to nothing. And nobody back then believed in overtime, comp time. If you wanted to be a police officer, if you wanted to be a deputy, you just worked whatever they asked you to do. And nobody today would put up with that.
And we loved every minute of it, didn't we?
Loved every minute of it, we think.
This room, back in the day, it was padded. Had pads on the walls and everything where people, if they put somebody in here, they couldn't hurt themselves. I'm sure they put inmates in here from time to time when they might have been trying to harm themselves or something. I don't remember it being used very much at all, though.
Years ago, somehow an inmate here got a pistol, and he went downstairs to the entry bars there and pulled a gun on the jailer and wanted to be released. The jailer threw the keys into the radio, what was a radio room, and said, "You're not going anywhere." Of course, he got on the radio and hollered for help, and we all came over, and the guy surrendered, but it was very dangerous.
And as you've seen coming in, you've got stairways coming up to the cells. That made it that much worse. Most of the time you had a trustee on the inside of what's called the security doors downstairs. You'd take the inmate, give him to him, the trustee would bring him, put him in a cell. So the jailer didn't have to come in much, but they did.
Now remember, this top half is in 2 sections. All the prisoners was locked up on either that side or this side, I mean after they come from downstairs. This door was locked at the time. So you had, and I'm just guessing, probably 50, 60 inmates in this section, 50 or 60 in that section, from what I remember. Come on in here. This door from what I remember, was never locked or anything. So you had inmates that just had the whole section right here, and they slept right then. Back then, that was a table, and they had a bench. It went the length of the table on both sides of the table. And at night, inmates would sleep on the table. They'd sleep on the bench and on the table and in the bunks here. So this is just kind of wide open here. And I remember there was only one toilet. It was kind of in the open here, and they had one shower here, and that was for everybody in this whole section right here. The toilet, that toilet has been added. That wasn't here. Now let me back up. When this thing was first built, there might have been a toilet there, but I started the police department in 1980, and there wasn't any toilets in all these cells in. There wasn't any toilets except this one out here that I remember.
I can't even imagine what it was like to be here.
Well, I had a friend one time, another trooper put in jail here, and he said the awfulest sound he ever heard was that clang of that door when it shut on him. He was somewhere he couldn't leave. Said he'd always been able to get up and do what he wanted to, but he couldn't.
This jail, when it was built, was not built for comfort. It never had heat and air. Just had big fans in the summer to circulate that hot air, and it was normally a little bit cool in the winter.
No air, no heat. During the summertime, your temperature outside 100 degrees. In here, it was probably 115, 20 degrees. They opened the windows. These are a little different now, but and had fans blowing in on the inmates. I believe downstairs they had one radiator type heat that would come up.
Wasn't any air conditioner, and it was very, very hot in the summertime, and they had some type of heat, but it was cold in here in the wintertime.
Like I say, back then, they didn't build a jail for comfort.
There's been a few people hung themselves in this jail over the years. I can't remember how many I've heard. I'm thinking of one. I know there's others, but I can't.
Man, Phil Carter brought a drunk in here one night, put him back in the drunk tank, and John was scared, the jailer. He was here by himself. He said there's one of those fellows in the drunk tank has been telling his buddies he's going to pretend he's choking himself and get me in there and attack me and get my keys. And so me and Phil went back there, and he had a towel wrapped around his neck, and he was, it looked like he's dead. But got looking close, he's sweating. Dead people don't sweat. So me and Phil got a hold of that towel and tightened it up a little bit. And that's why he got to jerking. Oh, y'all trying to kill me? I thought you was already dead.
They just slept wherever back then. I mean, they had a pad they slept on in here, out here. They'd crawl up on the table and sleep with blankets and stuff. There wasn't no padding for them, and I presumed it was overcrowded back then. I don't know.
Well, as you can tell by the cells over there, there's at times 8 people to a very small cell, so you only had room to sit, or 1 or 2 could walk around. You could take turns walking around, I guess. They
ate everywhere. I mean, they ate wherever. I mean, yeah, they'd sit at the table and they'd play cards and whatever at the table, and they'd also eat in their cell in the table. But like I said, there was quite a few that slept in there on the tables and on the benches back then.
It was a tough place for the inmates.
Okay, on Visitors Day, and I don't remember, it seemed like they had Visitors Day on Saturday or Sunday, and they might have had it through the week. I don't remember, but the inmates would go to here and they'd talk to the relatives or whoever they want to talk to. They'd been in jail, and they would have to let them outside the door to talk to anybody. They could talk through there. And there was glass up in here years ago, and I guess they for some reason they put metal on all that. I don't know the reason why, but the people coming up to visit them, they had to go up the stairs, to come up here and there'd be a long line of them. I remember a long line of them been waiting to visit them.
This old jail comes to be, like I said, home to some people. Craig probably knows the Andy Griffith movie, Otis. We had an Otis here in Jonesboro, and he'd get out and discover he was drunk himself, park his car, and a lot of times he'd walk into the police station. I think it was one night he come in there and Rusty said, well, just walk over to, we was on Church Street at the police station. Rusty told him go over to jail and turn himself in. He does. Walks in the jail in here, says I'm drunk, and he done that a bunch of times.
The same guy on Saturday for 2 weekends in a row, he would bring donuts to the jail, and he'd also take donuts to the police department. Done that 2 weekends in a row, and come find out he was charging the donuts to this jail.
He was a character, but he said in his later years, he said if it wasn't for the jail, the police department, the sheriff's office, he'd been dead. He was a good guy. He was just alcoholic. But yeah, everybody, go to jail, I'll call and tell him you're coming. He'd just walk up.
I think us as the older cops hate to see this place tore down.
Well, I hate to see it tore down. It's still, I bet, back when I came here, it was the best jail in Northeast Arkansas. I bet it's still the strongest.
Well, any jail either helps or hurts. Some people come here to any jail, particularly to this one, and not ever want to come back.
It just, even to a lot of the people that were inmates here, hoping that, like Jack said earlier, that it changed some of them because of how bad it is, not wanting them to come back.
Looking back, the way the manpower was, and of course the world was as violent back then, but I can't believe that all of us, we've lost several of us from that era due to death, but nobody got bad hurt, nobody got killed, and that amazes me.
Yes.
The good Lord was on our side, is all I'm saying.